Hey everybody tuning in online, welcome back to Flutter Atlanta. Today we're going to be talking about game development, but first, my name is Emmett Dean. I'm an engineering manager here at Black Airplane. I have a background in native Android and iOS development. Been using Flutter for over 3 years now, and I've published over 12 Flutter apps. We actually did a flight school here the other day at Black Airplane, and we actually have done 17 Flutter apps, I think, in the last 2 years, so it's actually way more than that. I love Flutter so much that I'm using it on my own projects. You'll get to see a little bit of that today. And I want to give a quick thank you to Black Airplane, which is where we do this meetup out of, and they provide food, drinks, and also allow us to use this awesome space. Black Airplane is a leading development agency in the Southeast, and we have a pretty special team of people here that produce top quality work, and we're capable of producing pretty much anything these days. So again, today we're going to talk about making a game in Flutter. This was specifically fun for me to make because I actually got into mobile app development through building games in high school. So we'll actually look at some of my code from 9 years ago, which used a framework very similar to Flame, just for fun. And then we'll talk about Flame, which is Flutter's go-to game development platform. So let's quickly go over a brief overview of Flutter. So again, what is Flutter? It's mainly a cross-platform UI framework that was created by Google and is now open sourced. So why would we want to use something like this for our game? The biggest reason, and the reason I was drawn to an old technology that we'll compare this to, was building your game for every platform. A lot of these games that you're going to see or think of, they're mainly going to be indie developer games. So it's going to be 1 or 2 small people, and being able to get their game in front of as many people as possible is really important to them. Flutter also has a growing community. It has very high performance rendering, which makes it great for simple games like this. And also, it's simple and familiar if you're already a Flutter developer. So, let's talk about Flame. What is it? Flame is a 2D game engine that's made on top of Flutter. It is a minimalistic design, but has many plug-in packages to allow you to accomplish really cool things. And it's very similar and familiar to other 2D game engines like libgdx, and this is actually the one that I used back in the day. We can take a quick look at their landing page. They're still around, amazingly, but this was a Java game development framework based on OpenGL, and it also claims cross-platform. So if you've ever worked with this and you're new to the Flutter world, this is going to feel very, very similar to that. Let's hop back to our slideshow. So what does it take to make a game with Flame? I'm just going to go over a couple key points of how you would actually use Flame, and then we'll start looking at some examples. So, installing Flame is as easy as adding any other package that you would use in Flutter. You simply just add the current version to your pubspec.yaml and then import Flame into your project. You'll notice here in this main method on this lower code example that you replace your My App widget out of the box with this game widget and just pass it your game class, which we'll talk about more in a second. This is assuming that all you're going to build is a game, and then you could let Flame handle all the routing. But what's really cool is the game widget is just a widget, so you can mix it with any other Flutter code you want. You could build a whole normal app as you would with your normal tool set, and then just have a mini game hidden in your app and use Flame just to build that mini game, which is really cool. So first, you're going to create a game loop. So what is a game loop? The game loop is basically a sequence of processes that run continuously, typically including input, update, and render. So this is very simple. You can just create a class that extends the type Flame game, and it's going to give you all of these different methods that you can overwrite to enable this. These are like onload, the update, the render, and then we'll talk about input a little bit later. But this is very different from normal Flutter development. So normal Flutter development, all of the rendering and everything is pretty much handled for you. With an update method, you can actually change things every single time that the screen is rendered. And it gives you actually a little double that tells you how much time has elapsed. So if you wanted to do crazy animations and stuff like that, you will do it just in the update method. So this is really cool. It's similar to if you've used a custom painter where you're actually going to change everything in the render over and over and over as if you're rendering at 60 frames per second or however fast it's rendering. But it's very easy to get used to. It's just a learning curve from normal Flutter development. So next, adding components to your game. So you can either create or select a Flame component that matches your needs and add it to your game in the onload function. So the most popular type of component is probably going to be your sprite component. A sprite component has things like position and also a system for uploading graphics like images and stuff like that. So here's a quick example of in our game. In the onLoad, we're just going to load the assets that it needs, set its position, and then create this player component, and then add it into our game world. Just like that, it'll appear. Next, let's talk about collision detection. Creating a class that extends a component from Flame, just like your sprite component, and then you can easily just add in a mixin for collision callbacks and then implement those collision-related callbacks. So this is very easy and kind of modular way to add different things to your various components. So again, just with this collision callbacks mixin, you then have your onCollision start and onCollision end methods that you can override to hook that up. There are some other packages we'll talk about in the future, like Forge2D, which is Flame's implementation of Vox2D, which is a popular 2D physics engine. So if you wanted to work more with actual like masses of objects and collision detection that's a little more advanced and out of the box, you can just import that package. We'll look at all of those packages here in a second. User input is just as simple. It's also implemented as a mixin, and with mixins you can actually use multiple of them at the same time. So you could have a component with tap callbacks and your collision, and then you just add the overrides for the methods that you want to pick up. They have tap callbacks, keyboard callbacks, all sorts of things. Pretty much any kind of input you can imagine in a Flutter app, you can use this to pick up on it. So that's really important. If you wanted to have certain keys do the same experience as taps on a mobile app, it allows you to do that kind of cross-platform. So you could build web and desktop and have that own kind of user input experience that matches whatever it would be on the phone. So here's some of the packages that you can supercharge your game with. Again, out of the box, just Flame is meant to be as minimal as possible so they don't overbloat your app. But if you need audio, they have packages for that. There's some popular state management libraries like Flame Block, which is basically a version of Block just meant to be used with Flame. Different things like Fire Atlas for loading in different textures. You have Forge2D, which I briefly mentioned, which is a Vox2D implementation of a physics engine, which is a lot of fun. Different isolates, network assets, Oxygen, which is an inventory type system. Rive, which is also really cool. We've talked about an animation here before. Rive is actually built with Flutter, and you can just import their animations here, and they have their own state. This allows you to use these really complex animations in-game very simply, which is great to add that extra level of polish. Different splash screen, loading SVGs, and then also tiled systems for popular tiled games like platformers, or if you thought of something like a Pokemon type 2 game. So I wanted to share a little game that I have in progress, and this is actually the game that I built 9 years ago when I was still in high school. I was in my AP Computer Science class. I built this game with libgdx, and briefly we can look at the code of one of my player classes written in Java back then. As you can tell, just at a brief glance, I really had no idea what I was doing with organization. Everything was public here, but you do see some semblances of this update method, which you will see actually in normal Flame code. So let me pull this up here. This is nowhere close to done. I just have some initial work done on it, and I do plan on taking this all the way to the App Store just for fun. So when I do finish it, I'll share it with you guys if you want to check it out. I am using the Forge2D for the physics here. I have not imported anything with animations or textures yet, so it's all just black and white like you saw in the screenshot. But I plan on using Rive to actually make this a little more interesting. So the idea here is you're just going to hop from ring to ring, and eventually the rings will actually get smaller as I build the rest of the game out. But as you just tap here, you try and jump to the next ring without touching the rings itself. So this is pretty much the premise of this game. This was actually a fan favorite of the games that I made back in high school. Fun little project. It was good for me to learn a little bit about Flame here. And again, very simple, but this is great for games like that. We'll also look at some other examples here that are a little bit more advanced games built with Flame. So if we head over to their examples, you have some really cool ones here that you guys can check out on flameengine.org. One of my favorites is the blob effect. Let's see if I can find it here. Probably already passed it. The blob example. This is really cool because it shows off some more of that Forge 2D game engine and how it will actually interact with other elements. So that you can see they're using a series of elements to act kind of as a blob, and you'll see how it kind of reacts, which is really cool. They have some other examples here that we can mess with. Pad racing, these are full sample games. So player 1 would be arrow keys. And this is basically going to be a little racing game, all built with Flutter. And again, in this scenario, it's actually running on the web, but would 100% be cross-platform. You could hook this up to mobile controls and run it on mobile. But yeah, those are just some cool little example games that we have here.
And do they provide the source behind those for you to figure out what's going on?
For the sample games, they do. And we can head over here into the samples. So this was the pad racing example. One thing I do want to note is, and something that I've struggled with internally while trying to learn this, is their examples, they don't have great organization patterns. Now, we've talked about our architecture in the past where you kind of have your presentation layer, your data layer, and then like a business logic layer. Well, with this, your components, the way they use inheritance to extend other components and use their mix-ins, where you're rendering the component is just a couple lines away from where you're going to implement the logic there. So I haven't messed around with the Flame block, but I do imagine that that will help that a little bit. But right now, as you can see, their example game doesn't even really have a folder. It's just all of the files in this folder, everything from their main.dart to just one of the balls here. So you can kind of see how this works. The onload method, creating the body, which is for the 2D engine or the physics engine, et cetera, et cetera.
And it manages the event loop for you in this whole process, right?
Correct. So let me see if I can find an example. Let's actually boot this up in VS Code real quick so we can hop around. Give it just a second.
Randall had a comment in there too.
I hope all these are marked mix-in for Dart 3. I am not sure. I have not looked actually at their Flame, at that Flame source code. Just see update. So this is in Markdown. These are all example files. So here's enemy component. So here's exactly what an update function will look like, and you'll get this double called DT, which is for delta time, which is how much time has elapsed since the last render cycle. And they have both an update and a render. So update is where you're going to change variables related to your actual component that will automatically be reflected in render. But as you can see, you have all of this loading logic, the actual business logic is here, and then also just actually getting rendered out technically is in this class, even though it's not overridden here. So I do think there's some room for improvement generally in Flame.
Can you zoom in?
Zoom in.
Yeah. Randall's saying the text is a little small.
So I think there's some room for improvement here around just Flame organization in general, or if the Flame team ever hears this and would like to share a large example project of how they have everything stored, that would be really useful. So back to building a game. So let's talk about just some closing thoughts here. Flame is really easy and fun. If you've ever done game development before, or if you want to get into game development, this is an excellent option. You can create games in just a matter of days and have them up on the App Store. As somebody who learned mobile development through game development, I think it's a great place to start. If you're a teacher thinking about rolling this out to some students, this would be a great way to show your game development class that could then very easily transition into a mobile development class in the future. The learning curve with the game loop is a little different. But it's something that you can pick up on very quickly if you're used to normal Flutter. My only downsides are that there's very few examples and the organizational best practices aren't great, but there is a large and welcoming Discord community. And if you want one of my own challenges or business ideas, there's not a lot of support for multiplayer here yet. There is one multiplayer client that you can use for these games. I think it's called Nakama, but Nakama's cheapest tier is over $500 a month. And as an indie developer, that pretty much prices you out of multiplayer. So if you want a good challenge, make multiplayer as a service for Flame. I think that would be awesome. And make it affordable or with a free tier for indie developers. Next time, we're going to be talking about what is Flutter and why you should use it, the sequel. I think this was requested again. That's why we brought this back. And now with a lot of changes with the new versions of Flutter and Dart getting released, we should have a bunch of new content to talk there. But I think you brought up some stuff about Google I/O. I wanted to include that here since it just happened. So if you guys want to also talk about Google I/O, who's online, just send in your conversation. But does anybody have any questions related to Flutter game development or any Google I/O aspects to kick us off?
I think I can answer Randall's comment about is it Dart? I just did a quick search on pub.dev and everything Flame says Dart 3 compatible. So
Cool.
I think that means yes, we're good. But.
Awesome.
Was there anything that surprised you getting into Flame, something easier or harder than it should have been?
It surprised me how similar it was to what I did 9 years ago. It really feels like, I guess there's not a whole bunch of breakthroughs in 2D game development. We've kind of been there, done that for a while, but it was refreshing and it was really fun just for me personally to get back into it. I think it's really easy. And the fact of how well it runs on all the platforms, I think is great. We always struggled back in the day with libgdx of an issue on Android versus an issue on iOS because it was very early on back then and it wasn't great. This, I would feel confident that it's going to handle that really well. And then also, I have some added comfort of getting to use normal packages that I would use, like Firebase or Revenue Cat for in-app purchases. All of those things I can just kind of plug and play because I've used them before.
This may be a weird question, but seeing that Flame is one of the engines you can use for animation work, has there been any thought or conversations about using Flutter with Unity or Unreal Engine?
There is a package for Unity. I think I have not personally used this, and I don't fully understand the use case. But as you can see here, Flutter Unity 3D widget for embedding Unity in Flutter.
Mm-hmm.
So this is 100% to take a Unity project and put it into a Flutter app.
Yeah, wrap it. Okay.
I'm not sure exactly what the advantages are there, but as you can see, a decent number of people are using it.
A friend of mine is doing some indie game development, and his website, it's got this kind of yarn ball motif, and his website opens with a 3D space that you can move around and select where you want to go. I can imagine something like that. If you've already made it and you want to use it here.
Yeah.
But probably not. Something. I don't know, but I would imagine you're not super interactable. I don't know.
Yeah, another thing that it would be interesting to talk about, let me see, element embedding. There's a great example here that might spark some creativity. Flutter showed this off at their last demo about element embedding, which this is a normal website with Flutter, just this little Flutter app embedded in it. We've all seen this before. What's crazy is the performance. So I can add a mirror, and it now mirrors this, and I can interact with this live on this website. I can start spinning it, and I can still interact with it while it's spinning. We can even mock up that it's on a device. So, use Black Airplane as an example here. Let's say we built an app we're really proud of as a case study, and embedded in our website is this picture of somebody holding the phone with the app that I can interact with right here. Some really unique, crazy experiences, or maybe you have a mini game if you wanted to build something with Flame, all on your website with doing crazy things. Really, really cool. Capability.
They were already running on the web. What's new? What's so new about it? This one?
This whole website, I don't believe is actually, this one might be, but you can embed this in a non-Flutter website. So you could take all the advantages of Flutter for a very small subset of your website, but because Flutter sucks at SEO, you could use something like Next, Nuxt, or SvelteKit and get great SEO, and then only use Flutter to enhance certain elements.
As a complement,
The site has a hashtag
Yeah.
at the end, so that's
This one probably
Angular,
isn't Flutter.
right? Okay, I don't know. I'm familiar with that being assigned for.
You can get rid of it in Flutter now. Typically, out of the box, Flutter appends this hashtag.
Oh, okay.
Is that going to be? Doesn't seem like Flutter sucking at SEO is going to be as big of an issue anymore with all the talk of SEO dying.
I made a joke in the Black Airplane Slack. One of our founding technical partners posted about what they released at Google I/O about search changing or eventually going away, and response with the new AI craze. And he was like, "Finally, here it is." And I claimed that's why Flutter's team didn't work on SEO, because they knew internally that this was going to go away, and maybe they just opted not to prioritize it. Why tackle the challenging problem when we can just wait out SEO dying? Randall mentioned they use the Unity engine with Flutter to do some augmented reality stuff. That could make sense. I know Unity has some really impressive AR capabilities. I think with Flutter, other than Unity, you can probably use normal ARKit and ARKit and some other AR plugins, but I can understand that Unity is probably more well-versed, especially in the gaming section. So moving on to Google I/O, what did you find interesting about Google
I
I/O?
haven't had time to even lift the cover on it, so I wanted to get your guys' opinion about what's going on, because I know you guys are closer to it than I am.
Yeah, I'm doing a decent amount with AI in general. I am a mobile team lead, but I feel like I build more stuff with AI day to day than I actually do mobile apps at this point. It's really impressive. I think Google's approach to it was interesting. They really pushed for doing AI responsibly. And some of the things that they said is like any AI generated image will have attached metadata to it that says it was AI generated. That was like, to me, that was like, good job, we're trying. The difficulty of stripping image metadata is next to none. Though if somebody wanted to do that, they could. So that's not really like a permanent solution. I did enjoy that in Bard, which is their competitor to ChatGPT, they're increasing sharing sources of information. So if it provides you information, a lot of times it'll say this comes from this source. I think that's a good change. I know that they just have a lot of capabilities coming out, and it also seems like they attach generative AI to just every product that they have. Like all the way down to, I can now on Android have an AI generated wallpaper just cause. That doesn't seem super useful, but I can do that now.
Well, I don't think every application has to be this slam dunk.
Yeah.
Right? You just were like, that's interesting. Cool.
Yeah, exactly. So now they have this great tool set under the Google Cloud platform that everybody in their organization has access to, and they probably got tasked, find a way to add generative AI to your section of this company, just to see what they come up with. And it looks like pretty much every part of the G Suite got it. We saw that new project called Tailwind, which is like a student note taker that's AI based. Unfortunate that they picked the name Tailwind when there's already a big project, Tailwind CSS, that's out there. But yeah, so that was really interesting. A lot of new projects. What impressed me the most, honestly, was their not so real-time demos of their photo editing, being able to grab a subject in photo and move it and it look 100% real. Stuff like that was really impressive to me.
Did we have Trey do a presentation on foldable phones and building apps for foldables?
I think we've mentioned it here. Every time I see a foldable phone, it doesn't fully make sense to me. There are some cool things about it, like being able to use your main camera as the selfie camera. That to me is like the most useful part of a foldable phone. I can still see the crease on the brand new Google Pixel. That's an $1,800 device. That just seems ridiculous to me. Like, I feel like the quality has to get better before they go mainstream. Flutter is, though, prepared for foldable devices. They were leading in making it prepared for that.
Maybe this is boring, but hey, Dart 3 is out.
Yeah.
And
cool.
I watched a video about some of the little new features, like switch statements are now cool.
Is it Dart 3 Alpha?
No, I mean it's straight up out, I thought.
Probably this looks cool. Dart 3. Announcing Dart 3.
13 hours ago, yeah. So that's the thing I was perusing.
So 100% sound null safety. I remember them, so like that last Flutter event that they had, they pretty much previewed all of this, but I think it was all in alpha or beta.
That sounds right.
So now you have these record patterns and class modifiers,
Return multiple values from a function. Hooray.
something that people have been waiting for quite a while. Working with structured data and pattern matching. Feeling more and more similar to like TypeScript-esque. Your switch statement example.
Right.
This is nice. Yeah, there's a lot of things that I'm sure we'll just start using and picking up on. You know, I'm not sure if these things are going to get enforced with like the linter or anything. Like I could see them adding a linting rule that prefers shortening switch statements.
If so, like a year from now.
Yeah.
Right.
The sealed classes are interesting here.
Randall's saying something.
Yeah, both released on Patents Day. Yeah, we upgraded to Flutter, what is it, 3.10?
10.
Yeah.
I did that today, and then a package I use is it's broken now, so I can't build.
Yeah, we had some linting rules that changed that caused some automated builds to fail.
Oh well.
Yeah, I know my coworker mentioned a lot about WebAssembly. This is going to be really important for Flutter's web presence in the future.
What is it?
WebAssembly is going to be basically, from my understanding, a new rendering option for web. So this is what enables this crazy performance.
Okay.
Which, yeah, really cool. Not sure how useful it is, but really cool. Sure you have Puro. I'm not sure what Puro is. Yeah, when we ran into build issues today, we just had our automated code magic builds, and they changed how many more const modifiers that you need to have in your default linting rules. So it was like add 50 more const words.
Go to type in Puro and pub.dev.
A powerful tool for installing and upgraded Flutter versions.
Never heard of this.
Very cool. Also, it's a Flutter version management alternative.
FVM. Okay.
Thanks, Randall.
Cool. Anyone else have any other questions? Awesome. Well, thank you those who tuned in online. We will, all right, I guess I need to talk about, yeah, we already said next topic. That's happening 6/11.